Do draft horses cost more to maintain than light horses? That's the topic for today's video. Hi, my name is Stephanie. I trail ride and horse camp with my drum horse, Fame. And every month on our Instagram, I do an Ask Us Anything. And one of the very common questions that we get is, will having a draft horse cost so much more money than having a light horse? So let's look at some of those expenses and talk about them. So your biggest upfront costs are going to be your tack and your trailer. And what I've kind of found to be true is that you don't necessarily have to pay a ton more money for draft horse tack, but you have fewer options and you have to shop online. My experience with tack for Fame has been that he actually fits a lot of standard tack when it comes to saddles, breast collars, cinches. We're able to find things. The only thing that I've had to do custom for him has been his bridle because his head is enormous. So you have to do a little bit more research and a little bit more hunting to find something. But there is stuff out there and it usually doesn't break the bank to purchase. For the trailer, I would say the trailer has been the thing that has hit my pocketbook the hardest. We needed a warm blood height trailer, which means that the inside is 7 foot 6 inches tall, as opposed to the standard height of 7 feet tall on the inside. If you've got a horse that's, 16 hands or higher, 7 feet is going to be a little on the cramped side. The cost for a warm blood trailer averaged about $3,000 to $5,000 more. A warm blood height trailer out here in California meant that I needed to spend at least $8,000 or $10,000. Whereas if I had a smaller horse, I could get away with getting an older trailer for maybe $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000. The trailer is definitely a bigger expense that you just kind of have to suck it up and take when you've got a draft horse. Now let's talk about monthly expenses. The biggest monthly expense that you're going to have is going to be your board. Fame's in a 24 by 24 foot paddock. I felt like for him with his size, 24 by 24 was the minimum that I wanted to do. If I had a quarter horse or a lighter horse, to be honest, I would probably just keep them in the same size paddock. You could put a lighter horse in a smaller situation. A lot of it just kind of has to do with what your horse is comfortable with and how much exercise and time they're getting outside of their paddock. Of course, you always want to go as big as you possibly can afford or that you can get at the boarding facility that you're at. And I found that for Fame, he seems to do well in the situation that we're in. So for us, the board situation and the board cost would be the same. The next big expense that you face having a horse is your farrier. And as a draft owner, I do pay a premium to have a draft horse. Fame is barefoot, which I am so grateful for. It means that he gets trimmed and I spend $40 more than I would if I had a light horse for every trim. Now, if you figure that you see your farrier every 6 weeks or so, and that means about 9 times a year, you multiply those costs out, divide by 12 to kind of get your monthly expense. It basically means that I'm spending about $30 more every month to have a draft horse that's barefoot than I would if I had a light horse or a quarter horse that was also barefoot. Now, there's an interesting point that I want to make about farrier fees that I'll talk about a little bit later in the video. Next, you're looking at vet care. So Fame gets his teeth floated every year. He also gets spring and fall shots. All of those costs are the same. They don't change just because he is a draft horse. The only variable that does change is his deworming. We only deworm twice a year. That works well for us out here in California. For you, it may be different. I know some people deworm every couple of months. And so because he is a bigger horse, he does need more dewormer. And so if you spread that cost out over every month, that means we're looking at about $4 or $5 more a month in extra dewormer. Not a big deal. Now let's talk about hay and feed. A lot of your hay costs are going to depend on what the boarding facility that you're at dictates. In our case, horses can get 2, 3, 4 flakes of hay. The price doesn't really change based on the horse's needs. And a lot of facilities that I researched in our area, if your horse needs 4 flakes due to their size, they don't charge you more, even though they might be feeding the Welsh pony next door only 2 flakes. Where you do pay more is if you are getting grass hay as opposed to alfalfa or oat hay. And so you're looking at paying anywhere from $25 to $50 more just to have grass hay. Now, Fame eats 4 flakes a day, and he's been on a grass and alfalfa mix, and that works really well for him. And I would keep a lighter horse on that same mix, which means I would be paying that premium every month anyway. So in my situation, the hay fee actually doesn't change. I'm still paying the premium for grass, and that's true whether or not I have a draft or a lighter horse. Where there is a slight difference though is when it comes to feed. So Fame is a little bit of a harder keeper, which means that I am spending more money to supplement what he eats. He just doesn't eat enough hay fast enough to keep the weight on. So we have tried a variety of different grains and high-fat feeds. If you have a draft horse and you do your research on nutrition, you will find that a high-fat diet is very commonly recommended. In our case, I have found that he's doing really well right now on a mix of pelleted hay with rice bran. He seems to love it, makes him really happy. It's kept his weight on this winter. And so I would say on average right now, I'm probably spending, I don't know, $120 a month just for extra supplementation for him. And if you figure he's somewhere close to 1,500 pounds, a lighter horse would be about 1,000 pounds, so about 2/3 the weight. That would mean that a hard keeper light horse, hypothetically, would be costing me $80 a month in additional feed, which means a difference of $40. So if you look at the monthly differences in cost, to have a draft horse, I'm really spending $30 more for his farrier fees, $40 more for extra supplementation, and maybe $4 or $5 more in dewormer, which means I'm spending about $75 more every month to have a draft horse than I would to have a lighter horse. Now, I mentioned earlier a really interesting point that I wanted to make when it came to the farrier fees. If I were to get a light horse that needed shoes, suddenly those numbers change quite dramatically. Here in California, if you have a shod horse, you're looking at maybe $200 to $300 every time your horse gets their feet done. If I were to have a shod light horse, I would be spending $125 more every month to have that horse than I would to have my barefoot draft horse. So the point I want to make with that is that when it comes to spending money on a horse and budgeting your monthly expenses, my experience has been that you actually want to pay closer attention to whether or not the horse needs shoes and whether or not the horse is an easy keeper. Because for me, my greatest monthly outgoing expenses could vary with the farrier fees and with the extra grain or supplementation fees. Those really are the two biggest expenses, and it really has more to do with that individual horse than it has to do with whether or not they're a draft horse. Having a draft horse has really not made a dramatic difference in terms of my monthly cost. It is a little bit more expensive, but given his size and given the assumptions that people often make about draft horses, it isn't a dramatic, huge increase like a lot of people think it is. And I love having my draft, and there's so many things that I really enjoy about him that makes it completely worth it for me. If you have any other questions for us, let me know down in the comments below. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Bye.